All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kelly O'Donnell. I'm the director of Science Forward, which is our science curriculum program at Macaulay. And what I want to talk about, oh, that didn't work. Does that work? Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today, sort of what Science Forward is. I mean, we've presented this, I think the last time we were, maybe 2 or 3 Bronx Ed Techs ago, we presented this, so you might have seen some of this, but there have been improvements to the OER thanks to the CUNY OER initiative, and so that is what I'm going to talk about today. Specifically sort of how Science Forward works, how the OER works, what's on the OER, and how we're changing it to increase usability and accessibility. And then I want to have a little discussion at the end because that's what I like. So Science Forward had, oh, this is a little squished. That's okay. Science Forward has 4 sort of core qualities. It is the redesigned curriculum framework for science education at Macaulay. It started happening in 2013, and it's been, there's a team of faculty that proposed a change to the curriculum sort of in an effort to standardize it, because it was very different across the 8 consortial campuses of Macaulay. We have 28 faculty that teach this class every semester, and there was some curricular drift, I'll say. And so this was an effort to rein it in, but also to make a resource, a wider resource that can be used at CUNY. The basic idea is that, we think to be an informed citizen of the world, you need to be able to evaluate, you don't have to be a scientist to be an informed citizen, but you do need to be able to evaluate evidence that's presented to you as scientific, because there's so much of it out there, and you need to know, even if you don't know like one particular fact, whether or not it's true, you need to kind of know where to go to be able to figure that out. And so that's the sort of broad way that Science Forward works. To do that, the curriculum has these 4 essential qualities. It's skills-focused, interdisciplinary, active, and experiential. And so I'm going to go through how it's each of these now. So, like I said, an interdisciplinary team of faculty, so we have life scientists, physical scientists, we have people from the humanities. We're on this committee that developed the course. We basically came up with a list of skills that all scientists have, regardless of what kind of scientist you are. And then we categorize them into these 3 sort of chunks. And a lot of these images you'll see are things that I took from the OER. And you can see, like, for example, a more complete list of these if you go to the OER. So these are number sense, which are your basic numeracy skills, handling units, doing conversions, making estimates, data sense, which is what you do with those numbers eventually when you get them. So measurement accuracy, how we statistically calculate uncertainty, doing other sorts of statistical analysis, data visualization, and then knowledge sense is sort of like the catch-all for everything else. It's what you do with those that data that helps you generate scientific knowledge. So a lot of the philosophy of science stuff is in here. How you set up an experiment, what it means to ask an empirical question, how you develop a hypothesis, how you communicate those results once you have them, and how communicating to different audiences is a really important skill to have. You need to know like what you need to explain to a public audience versus a professional scientific audience. And so all of that stuff kind of falls into the knowledge sense category. And these skills are the common thread that run throughout the whole curriculum. Regardless of which particular science you're talking about at any particular moment, the common thread are these skills. And the course is interdisciplinary because we want to stress that these skills are common. So this is a snapshot from the OER that shows part of the video library. So you can see that there's a lot of different types of topics that we cover. So we have hydrology and ecology, climate change. We have some that are just about tools. So this tools we're seeing is from microscopes to telescopes, and so it's a lot of number scale stuff. Then there's the more philosophical ones, like what is science, or scientific uncertainty, or a clip from one of the new videos about science and ethics that I'm going to show a little bit of. So I'm a plant ecologist, but when I'm teaching Science Forward, I have to teach geology. I have to teach quantum mechanics sometimes. And like you can teach enough of it as long as the context is those scientific skills that you don't have to, it's not a deep dive into those topics, it's really focused on the skills. So I have to set up an experiment in a greenhouse and know what a control is, the same way a physicist needs to set up an experiment and know what a control is. Like that is common. And so it's really important that the course be interdisciplinary to sort of stress that student understanding. The other essential quality is that it is an active classroom. I don't lecture. What the videos that are the sort of centerpiece of our OER facilitate is student engagement with the materials outside of class before they get in. So they watch the videos, they do whatever paired readings go with those videos, and then they're in the classroom ready to practice those skills. So, you know, we do a little bit of orientation, we do sort of maybe like a mini, like 5-minute lecture, like a little chunk, and then they're off running, doing a climate model, or doing a t-test, or some statistical analysis, or they're doing data visualization, or they're going through newspapers and looking for chart junk in the various graphical presentations that are in those newspapers. So they're practicing these skills, and that's sort of the front-loaded, like the most obvious thing we're doing in class. So the videos help with that sort of active, flipped nature. We want students to be engaged with the process of science. We want them to be engaged with these skills. The last essential core part of Science Forward is that it's experiential. So for this, we start the semester with a 24-hour species diversity survey called a BioBlitz. It's usually a focus, well, for us, it's a focused particular park in the city. Last year we did Inwood Hill Park, and the students are out. Each student is not out for the whole 24 hours. I'm almost out for the whole 24 hours, but the students take 3-hour shifts. They're put on teams with naturalists that are experts in a particular group, and they look for as many things as they can. Then those data that they collect that day become the basis for their poster, their big semester-long project, which is an original research poster. So they take a piece of those data, they ask the question, they design the analysis, they present the results as their own work. So for this whole experience, they're engaged with the process of science, practicing all of these skills. So that's sort of the framework of Science Forward. And so part of one of the initial goals, besides the redesign of the course, was to create this resource. I mean, we obviously needed something that we could show to our 28 faculty just at Macaulay to give them, like, these are the materials, you can use them, and you should use them. But we also wanted it to be open to everyone, because we think what we made was pretty good, and we want other people to make use of it. So everything is open access here. All of the videos are free to use. They're all Creative Commons licensed. All of the materials on here are also free to use or free to, change. And I found so the centerpiece of the OER is the video library. And I did find, so the first year I taught science, so I did Science Forward in the fall of 2013. We didn't have our custom videos yet. And so what I had found trying to structure the course as if they had existed already, I was looking for other people's video content to pair with peer-reviewed literature and textbook chapters if I needed it. And there just wasn't a lot out there that has scientists talking about the skills that they use when they do their work, which is kind of what we wanted to stress in this class. So our videos do sort of fill that gap. And that is not the only, so that is the main thing that's on the OER, but it's not the only thing. There's also sample syllabi. So we've taught this class, at Macaulay, the honors version. There's a fully online version. We've taught it at community college. So all of those sample syllabi are available and free to use. There's also resources that go with each of the videos. So these are, here's an example for the urban ecology video. Each video has this sort of like quick description, what skills we think are the most important that come out of that video, classroom ideas, so ideas for lessons, ideas for activities, and then I couldn't fit it on here, but below the classroom ideas, there's also the recommended readings to pair with each of the videos, and these are these are all readings that the students can access. A lot for the things that are peer reviewed. These are ones that I know you, as a CUNY student, you can access. There's also a lot of OER textbook chapters that we recommend if you need some background to go with each of the videos, and those kinds of things are on this list. The other thing that's on the OER is these data resources. So for classes who want to do something else with the BioBlitz data, or they have their students collect different data, or they want students to just have access to open data sets, we have a whole bunch of like a curated list of places you can go to get more data to use in class. So that's kind of how the OER has stood for a few years. And then in 2018, well, 2017, I guess, the 2018 CUNY OER initiative led us to make 3 more videos from the video library. So we did one on cancer biology that really focuses on experimental design, particularly using clinical trials as an example. Then we also did one on energy use, which a lot of those skills are sort of number sense skills, sense of scale, like how much energy you can get out of a barrel of oil versus if we started using fusion, for example. And ethics, which I'm going to show you a clip of, is our more philosophical take for this round. And the reason I want to show you a piece of this one is it starts out with a whole bunch of different scientists talking about different ethical problems that they might encounter. So you get a sense of sort of the number of scientists we have involved in a short period of time. So I'm going to get out of this for a moment and show you the first segment of this video.
It's a moment we've all faced. There's something we really want. Maybe it's an A in a class. There are different ways to get there. You can buy an essay or the test answers around some disreputable corner, or you can do all the work, research additional sources, talk to people you know about what you're learning, ask questions in class, and more. Either of these ways can get you to that A. And for each way of getting to the A, there are consequences. Some are immediate and intense. Some are slow and subtle. And some are positive and permanent. When we reach these moments, we balance risk and reward, effort and ability, chances of getting caught, and severity of penalties. And most of all, we consult our own inherent sense of right and wrong. We probably make these kinds of decisions many times a day, sometimes without even noticing them. But for a scientist, in her scientific work, the scales and stakes of these decisions might be much bigger, and the dilemmas more complex. In this video, we'll be discussing those scales and stakes and how scientists balance them in their work. Members of the scientific community face a wide variety of ethical questions.
I think it's about being transparent, about honoring the scientific process, sharing your results with the community so they can be tested, and in the end, taking your scientific knowledge to do good, as cliched as that sounds.
Medical ethicists think about a range of issues that goes from smaller, everyday issues that might come up in a hospital setting or in a doctor's office, and then those sometimes overlap with some bigger questions like end of life.
We always want to make sure that no harm could come to the individuals who participate. We want to let them know ahead of time that they can withdraw from the study at any given time if they choose to. We also want them to feel comfortable. I mean, they're donating time again and part of themselves to this, so it is quite important they understand this.
A field researcher needs to come with an ethical attitude of responding to people's needs as they're perceived, and to be thoughtful and respectful.
My main focus is to make sure that everyone has equal access, and that means considering women, that means considering minorities, that means considering people with disabilities. I need to make sure that they have just as much access to the work that we do and the opportunities that we provide than anybody else.
I think big ethical concerns come in with the chemicals that get used in the laboratory and how you dispose of the chemicals and our environment. And those aren't things that are always so thought of. We tend to think of the genes as being so scary, but the chemicals can often be more scary than the genetics involved. So for me, a lot of the ethical concerns come in, how am I protecting my students who work in the lab? Are the people who work in the lab? Are people safe in this particular environment?
Everything has a two-edged sword to it. We discovered that the atom can give you energy which is 1,000,000 times more than a chemical reaction. How to harness that peacefully is one of the great challenges of our era, actually.
All these kinds of questions require the kinds of balancing and analysis that we do in our everyday lives. But can we really trust our own common sense or gut feelings? What makes right and wrong into ethics?
I think that a lot of people think of science in succeed or fail sorts of terms. They think of it as something very mechanical, something with right or wrong answers, something that you need to be objective for. And ethics can sometimes be seen as a very emotional sort of discipline.
It's funny because the way you put it, it's interesting because I would say that science is much less objective than most people think, including a lot of scientists, and ethics is a lot more objective than a lot of people seem to think. Science, of course, is based on empirical evidence, but again, it is done by human beings. Human beings have preferences, and they fall in love with their theories, and they're selective about the kind of data that they acquire. You are right that from an evolutionary perspective, ethics did originate as a series of gut feeling, but that's not what ethics is. So if you think that something is right or wrong, you ought to be able to articulate it. Why is it that, just saying, well, I feel that way, that's not going to convince anybody. But you can articulate those thoughts in a rational manner, in a reasonable manner, and that's where you're really doing ethics. So ethics really is a branch of logic. So in a sense, it's actually surprisingly more objective. Objective doesn't mean independent of the human mind. I don't mean that there are rules of morality that are written somewhere outside of the human mind and we can just read them off somewhere. What I mean is that given certain assumptions about what humans want, desire, then you can build a logically coherent system of rules that will get you closer to certain things and farther away from other things. If we were a completely different kind of species or had a completely different kind of social structure, then we would have to have a different ethics.
The science.
So that's, in some ways, this is a little bit different from most of the videos that are in the library because it is a little bit more philosophical than the others, but this one had the highest density of scientists in it for the shortest amount of time. So that's why I want to show this. There's a lot, if you have one of those handouts in the back, there's a lot of CUNY, in fact, most of the scientists we interviewed for this are CUNY scientists, and we've heard from students that they really do appreciate that. They've told me that they like seeing what's going on other campuses. They like seeing that there's so many different types of science that are happening at CUNY. So they do actually notice, which was really, really nice to hear. So that's what we did with the first round of OER, the OER initiative. The second round, which is currently in progress, and I was hoping was going to be done by today, but it's not, is that we are improving usability of the OER. We're getting more and more of our own faculty to use as many videos as they can in their courses, but it's a slowish process. And so we're thinking that we need to sort of change the way the OER is structured so that it's a little bit easier to access for our faculty. They kind of understand where they can go for the different pieces of the course that they can sort of put together like a puzzle however they want, because the videos are each independent. You don't have to watch them in sequence. You can swap them out. You don't have to use all of them. And so we want to make that a little more clear to make this a better faculty tool. So we're doing that. And then the other thing, all the videos have closed captioning. They all have PDF transcripts, but they don't have audio descriptions. And so to increase accessibility, what we're doing with this round of the OER initiative is adding audio descriptions and those transcripts as well, so that that'll make the videos more accessible. And so we have a professional company that's doing this, that vets these audio descriptions with visually impaired people who actually would use these resources. And so we're hoping that this will be a really good addition to the OER. So I imagined that I was going to talk faster, I guess, even though I talk super fast. So I was hoping that people would sort of sit with an interdisciplinary partner. That's kind of why I had all those Post-its in the front, but I'm not sure if people walked in later and might have missed it. But if you just want to talk for a second with whoever's sitting near you about some of these questions. So the video you just saw, how would you use it if you're in a science class? How would you use it if you are not in a science class? Because the other thing we think with this OER is that, yes, it's made for a course that is explicitly science. But we have other courses at Macaulay that have used some of these videos, particularly the climate change video, and they're not science courses. So how would you use what we just watched in a different kind of class, in a science class? What kind of activities would you do? And then thinking about the parts of the OER I did show you, what might be missing? So if you just want to talk with your partner for a minute, pick one of those questions, and we'll see what we come up with. This was going to be a more structured discussion, but we don't have a lot of time left. I mean, there aren't that many people here. We could also just all talk together.
Yeah. I think the ethics is the most yeah, because a lot of students don't understand what's expected of them. They have to study thoroughly. They can't read the data. And they don't understand what plagiarism is. Making shortcuts. So I think that can be used for science, or it can be used for sociology.
I think the ethics side of it I would use in my classes because, you know, basically what you're saying. I think the problem is when they, you know, let's say, when they decide to buy, you know, whatever, you know, they're losing the point. You know, that it's about, you know, doing research papers, doing, you know, projects is about learning skills that they're going to need in the workplace later on, learning skills. Where you have, in college, you can make mistakes, you can fail at those things. And nothing's bad going to happen. Except maybe, you know, you're just getting maybe a little bit of a lower grade if you're not able to make it up. While in the workplace, you don't have that kind of rubric.
Actually, I had a student years ago who, excellent student, but when she got into the workforce, she kept calling me up every week like, oh, how do I get out of this? I made this mistake at work with the computer, with this thing. And after a while, she's like, what's the matter with me? They tell me something and I don't remember it. I said, you're still acting like you're in college. You cram it in, you go and pass the exam, and then you forget it. And now in the workforce, you can't do that. They explain something to you, you got to get.
Yeah, I would.
And I think also the other thing about science, and I teach them, there's no exact right answer. You're basically just looking at things, just get a better understanding of how they work. And everyone's afraid of making mistakes. And they say, oh, what should I do? I said, whatever you think, just do it and see what happens.
Yeah, one of the biggest things about that poster project that we talked about is they think that if they do a project like significant result that they fail. No, you analyze the data and you got a result. It just wasn't what you expected. It still counts as information.
I grade them on how they explain their results. And even if it's what could have happened? What could have gone wrong? And that shows they understand. And you can get a great grade even if you don't have the best results.
Right. That's a hard
And my students are already set for working at a disadvantage. Okay, when I used to teach here in Cleveland, but I've also taught at City College and other places. But I run community now. And a lot of my students don't have the confidence, they don't have the skills, and they're like, and they're always worried about passing.
Yeah. And that also just kind of takes away from the getting the science part of it.
Now, are you from, oh, you're from
I'm
McCall.
okay. So I'm going to bring everyone together. There's some good discussions happening, and as usual, I have to turn them off. So for the first one, I mean, does anyone have any good examples of their own courses where this might fit in? I think there are a lot of handles here for different types of courses. Does anyone come up with some good ones that they want to share?
I would just say freshman comp class in English, it would be perfect to use those as, as a starting point, especially to have suggested readings to really, I could imagine making a whole unit of a class that isn't necessarily about the science per se, but is kind of working through that material and talking, or maybe not as much of first semester class, but even as you get into more writing in the disciplines kind of writing classes.
Definitely, that's a great example. Any others?
I think what we were talking about was the idea that a lot of students don't understand about the ethics part of it. And that goes in all parts of life.
Yes.
And you have to learn it now, not wait until you become a professional. Well, really, a lot of times you don't really get taught that until you're at your capstone, and then you start to have to think about it. You have to start learning that from the first day.
Absolutely. I mean, when when I share this with lots of other science people, I mean, I didn't get any philosophy of science until I was in graduate school. Like undergrad, there wasn't time for it. There was so many other like intro stuff you had to do. And it's another thing I've heard from my students. Like we don't, I think this was at City. One of my students told me they were taking Orgo at the same time, and they were like, we don't have time in Orgo to think about like why these experiments are set up the way they are. We just have to memorize reactions.
Yeah.
And so they appreciated that they had that sort of time. I mean, I'm thinking about ethics, like it almost never came up, even in graduate school. I mean, I work with plants, so it really kind of didn't. Like I didn't have to do IRB stuff. I had to make permits, but plants don't care if you uproot them. So other graduate science programs get that. I didn't really. What about the OER? Or does anyone have any other comments on any of these? We only have 3 minutes, so if anyone had a particularly good discussion.
Well, so I'm a librarian, and so we teach information literacy almost every day, and so the knowledge part. Like you said, like when they're doing Orgo, they don't necessarily know how the experiment's set up, but information literacy can sort of work with that they can, it's set up in the same way that an experiment would be, that you have to, identify your keywords, identify your sources, and then build. And so being able to like put those together would be helpful.
Yeah, the information, and that's something that we talk about in our class, in what I'm teaching science forward too, because they have to be able to figure out where to get information.
Like you have to do a lit review for everything. Like,
right.
You shouldn't be doing your lit review last.
Right. Right. Exactly. Does anyone have any other comments? I'm sorry, I had to cut everything short. Yeah.
I think just quickly, I teach in behavioral and social sciences, so we talk about ethics all the time.
Right.
In intro classes because we're dealing with humans, but I think like having to see a connection between like the bio class that they're dying in and my class, which they're probably doing okay in, is really helpful.
Yeah.
Like it's all scientific knowledge, it's all the same kind of like thinking and numeracy and like.
Right. That's why we sort of pulled out the skills and made the skills sort of the centerpiece of this, because it's useful anywhere. Yes, you can see my bias is like plant science. Obviously, other science classes talk about ethics. So in terms of where, just to wrap up, like I said, we're hoping that these changes we're making to the OER do lead to wider use, at Macaulay especially, but also beyond. We are continuing to seek funding to build on our library right now. It has, I think 13 of the videos are like content, like a specific field of scientific inquiry, and then the other ones are the more philosophical ones. But that certainly, it covers a semester if you want to use all of them. But if you want to swap some out, we allow the faculty to, if somebody doesn't want to teach plant phys as one of their units, they don't have to. They can swap it out with something else. But right now, we have enough for an entire semester, but we could use a few more if people want more flexibility.
Have you thought of just asking other campuses, other faculty to donate videos that they might be interested in doing? Because I know I'll be making
to like propose?
Yeah, like we need something along this venue. Could you, if you have anything, could you?
Yeah, when we do workshops for this, we usually take faculty feedback. We really should have something on the OER that's like, do you have a good idea for a new video? Propose it here. We should do that. Usually we do that in person, but yeah, having it on here would be great.
I would love to see involved in our undergraduate research committee, and we don't really have a class like this at City Tech, and I couldn't imagine there being one just because of the nature of the very rigid programs that we tend to have. But I would love to see like a 1-credit class or something that could be actually not credit bearing, that like student researchers could take a path through something like this.
And do you think students would go for a 1-credit class? Because sometimes I hear that they won't
take. I don't know that they would take a 1-credit class, but I could imagine like mentors saying,
if
you want to work in my lab, like go through
this
kind of thing.
I think it would fit in very nicely with the Honors and Emerging Scholars program.
Exactly.
Where they have a series of like mandatory workshops.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
It could be
that's
a workshop or a program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to cut it off. Okay. I was having such a good time. Okay, well, thank you all for coming.